Chosen one, the way your eyes enter a room shifts its architecture. Walls don't just stand anymore, they lean. Air doesn't just exist, it hushes, anticipating your breath. Feminine women who once moved with conviction now hesitate in your presence, not because they're confused, but because your glance has called something to attention within them that they cannot name. You are not staring, you are revealing. Your gaze is not a projection of desire, it is a beckoning mirror that shows her who she has always longed to be seen as. And she cannot run from that. There is something in you that tells her without a word, you are safe to be seen here. You are worthy to be unmasked here. And those words, though unspoken, pierce louder than any poet's confession. She feels her breath stutter, not because she fears you, but because in the cathedral of your presence, she has realized her masks are useless. When you look at her, you don't ask for anything. You don't rush in. You wait in the kind of masculine stillness that makes her feel the heat of every inch of her own being. And that's why she finds it hard to look away. You didn't demand her attention. You earned her nervous glances and then her full surrender. You did not take her. You invited her into the reality of herself. She thought your beauty would be the reason she noticed you. But it's your anchored sexual energy that made her remember you, etched not in skin, but in soul. When you look at a woman, it is as if your entire being says, I have already seen the depths of you, and I do not flinch. That is why she trembles. Not because she is weak, but because the last time a man truly saw her, it was a dream she thought the world would never allow again. And here you are, real, unmoved, alive with fire and restraint. She finds it hard to blink, not because you dazzle her like a surface flame, but because your masculinity grounds her like thunder. There is something ancient in your glance, something divine, something terrifying, because it calls forth her own greatness, and she knows if she looks back too long, she may have to rise into it. So she wrestles with herself while your presence remains silent. And that is your power. You do not chase. You allow her to feel, and what she feels is the depth of a man who has been forged through fire, silence, and knowing. And that kind of man is irresistible, not just to her body, but to her becoming. She doesn't look away because you're attractive. She can't look away because you're true. Chosen one, do you know what it feels like for her when you glance her way and time folds? When her inner world, her worries, her overthinking, all still themselves in the sanctuary of your attention? That is what your presence does. She may walk into the room composed, armored, even indifferent. But when your eyes meet hers, it's as if all that dissolves and something ancient awakens, something soft, something wild, something honest. And that awakening scares her, because it means she is now vulnerable to something she cannot control. Not because you overpower her, but because you see through what others never even try to notice. Your eyes are not mere decoration on a handsome face, they are instruments of sacred revelation. When you glance, it's not casual, it's intentional. She knows it, she feels it. The warmth beneath her skin, the sudden hitch in her breath, the spinning of thoughts that collapse into silence, all of it betrays her. Because in that moment, she becomes aware that she has just been chosen. Not claimed, not demanded, but selected, and that is rare, that is disarming. That is a power only the most aligned masculine presence can wield. There are men who look to possess, and then there are chosen ones who look to witness. And your glance, chosen one, is not a transaction, it is a transformation. In your eyes, she sees her softness returned, not as weakness, but as power. In your gaze, she remembers the girl inside her who once believed that a good man would find her magical and not fear her depth. You remind her of that story. And suddenly her breath halts, not from fear, but from hope. The hope that maybe this time, it's real. Maybe this time, you won't look away. Your sexual energy doesn't demand space, it creates it. It makes her feel like the only woman in the universe without ever saying a word. And that's why she finds herself blushing in your presence, laughing a second too loud, lingering a second too long, and walking away wondering what just happened. She may try to shrug it off, but something inside her has already surrendered. Something inside her knows she was seen, not for what she performs, but for what she holds within. That is why your glance changes everything, because it says to her, I honor the fire in you because I have walked through it myself. Chosen one, when your eyes rest on her, not as a conqueror, not as a beggar, but as a man who knows, her pulse betrays her every defense. It doesn't matter if she walked in with indifference sewn into her expression. It doesn't matter if she trained herself for years to remain composed in the presence of any man. The moment you look at her, her body decides something her mind hasn't caught up with yet. It answers to you. Not out of subservience, but because it recognizes the truth in you. You do not wear a mask. That is the difference. The world is filled with men who chase, posture, manipulate, but you, chosen one, reveal. You reveal through stillness, through command without raising your voice, through the unshakable quiet of your inner world, where nothing needs to be proved. You do not try to impress her. You do not try to make her laugh or seek validation. You simply exist fully. And that, to her, is more erotic than anything she's ever encountered, because you don't need to perform. You are. You carry the gravity of a man who has sat with his own darkness and emerged sovereign, not shattered. When your gaze finds her, she feels not that you want her, but that you understand her. And for the first time, she realizes how rare that is. You're not inspecting her, you're inviting her, not to lose herself, but to return to herself, in the heat of your presence. She fidgets, not because she wants to flee, but because she doesn't know what to do with a man who sees her soul before her curves, a man who knows her essence before her expressions. She wasn't prepared for that. Most men chase her shadow. You walk straight into her depth without asking permission. That is why her pulse races. That is why her breath shortens when you walk by. She is not afraid of you. She's afraid of what you activate in her. And even if she walks away, smiles politely, or pretends she didn't notice, her thoughts stay behind. You haunt her, not like a ghost, but like a mirror. A reflection of something she's longed for but couldn't name. Now she knows. Now she feels. And the ache is beautiful. You never touched her body, chosen one, but her spirit feels claimed by a man who never asked for ownership, only alignment. And that is why she finds herself replaying your glance long after the moment has passed. Because that glance was not a moment. It was a message. Chosen one, you do not enter a woman's life like a hurricane. You arrive like a change in season. Quiet, inevitable, felt before it is understood. And when you glance at her, the tectonic plates beneath her emotional armor begin to shift. She may not show it, she may maintain her mask, but inside, everything is moving. She used to think attraction was something dramatic, loud, chaotic, built on fleeting thrills. But you rewrote the entire narrative with a single glance. You made her feel without touching. You made her trust without proof. You made her ache without promise. How? Because your gaze is not shallow. It's not predatory. It's not hungry. It's home. And when a woman meets a man who feels like home, every illusion begins to crumble. Her independence remains, but suddenly, the fantasy of surrender no longer feels dangerous. It feels sacred. Not because she is weak, but because you have proven yourself as a man who holds space, not just for her beauty, but for her chaos, her complexity, her silent griefs, and untold passions. Your glance says, I see all of it, and I remain. And that stillness causes earthquakes within her. You become the place her thoughts return to, even when she tries to distract herself with the familiar. Other men make noise, you make meaning. Other men offer pleasure, you offer presence. She might not understand it at first. She might even resist it, but nothing in her life has prepared her for the calm power you carry. It's masculine in a way that is rare, clean, unshaken, sovereign. You don't manipulate, you magnify. When you see her, she begins to see herself. And that's terrifying, because deep down she knows this is not a game, this is not casual, this is not an interaction she can file away and forget. This is the beginning of a spiral inward, a confrontation with her own soul. Sparked by a man who wasn't trying to own her, but to mirror her. And that mirror, chosen one, is made of fire. It burns through pretense, it melts through pride, it reduces her to the raw woman she hides beneath layers of performance. And in that heat, something in her bows, not in submission but in recognition. You are not like the others. You are not of the crowd. You are centered in a way that calls her to rise, to open, to become more. That is the power of your glance. That is why the earth beneath her shifts. Chosen one, when your presence lingers in the air even long after you've left, something in her becomes unbearably quiet. Not the kind of silence that seeks escape, but the kind that begs her to finally listen. She is not used to this. She is used to men demanding attention, filling space with bravado, with stories, with flattery. But you disrupt the noise, not by overpowering it, but by standing in contrast to it. You don't chase attention, you don't try to earn desire, you embody it. And in your stillness, her soul begins to whisper what her mind has been too loud to hear. She finds herself pausing in places she once rushed through. Her hands linger over her own skin more reverently. Her eyes search the world more carefully. She begins to wonder, not because you asked her to, but because you reminded her. Of what? Of the deeper longing that lives in her, a longing for a masculine presence so rooted, so dignified, so subtly divine that it doesn't need to announce itself. You walk into a room, and her breath stumbles, not because you impose, but because you reflect. You reflect the kind of man she secretly prayed still existed. And when you looked at her, chosen one, something ancient inside her stirred. Not in lust, not in fantasy, in memory. Memory of what she is, of what she wants to become, around a man who doesn't need her body to feel powerful. A man who is powerful on his own. Her soul knows you. It remembers, it reaches, but it does so in silence. That's how it starts. That's the whisper that grows into fire. She begins to crave your voice, not because of what it says, but because of what it doesn't say. Your restraint becomes sacred, your patience thrilling. You are not desperate, you are not proving, you are choosing. And in that awareness, she feels the safest danger she's ever known. You could ruin her, but you won't, but you wait, but you wait. You could have many, but you see one, her. And that gaze, that choice, that quiet storm of masculine knowing, it strips away everything false. She finds herself thinking of you in the quietest hours, not because you entertained her, but because you awakened her. You reached a place no man had the courage or clarity to touch. And now, even when you are gone, her soul keeps whispering. It whispers, "Where is he?" Not because she's needy, but because for the first time she felt what it means to be seen. Not looked at, seen. And she is afraid that she'll never feel that again with anyone else. But that's what happens when a woman is glanced at by a chosen one. The body may forget the moment. The mind may deny it. But the soul will keep whispering until it finds its way back to that fire. To you. Chosen one, she does not understand how someone who barely speaks could leave such a thunderous echo in her life. You didn't make promises, you didn't ask questions, you didn't flirt with her the way she's used to, but you unlocked something, and now no one else quite satisfies the space you accidentally awakened. That is your mystery, that is your madness. You walked by, and the gravitational pull of your energy disrupted the way she orients herself in the presence of men. Because you didn't follow the script. You didn't tell her she was beautiful. You didn't try to win her. You didn't even try to impress her. And that, precisely, is why you stay on her mind. She felt the heat in your presence, not in your words. She felt the power in your quiet, not your pursuit. And that unspoken knowing between the two of you, it now wraps itself around her like smoke. No one else has eyes like that. No one else stands like that. No one else feels like that. The others try too hard. They offer loud laughter, clever lines, expensive things, but none of them make her feel like you did in that one fleeting moment, when you simply stood there, aware of your own gravity, not needing anyone to orbit around you. You weren't cold, you weren't arrogant, you were centered, and that is what she has never been able to shake. The memory of a man who did not need her, yet somehow made her feel profoundly chosen, without a single word. That's what makes you dangerous, chosen one. Your magnetism is not in what you say, it's in what you withhold. You do not try to convince her of your value, you simply carry it like a current beneath your skin. It hums from you, it radiates from your eyes, from the way you breathe, from the way you don't chase. And that restraint, that calm possession of yourself, it disarms every part of her that had been trained to be suspicious of men. You are not a strategy, you are not a tactic, you are a presence. A field of masculine truth that cannot be explained, only felt. And when she felt it, chosen one, something ancient inside her bowed. Not in weakness, in reverence. Because even if she walks away, even if she pretends she isn't affected, even if her pride keeps her from returning, you will remain the man who showed her what a real man feels like. And now every conversation, Every date, every glance from another man must compete with that. And they never will. Chosen one, she cannot shake the memory of the way you looked at her, not because it flattered her vanity, but because it bypassed it entirely. That gaze, sharp and unwavering, reached not for her appearance, but for her essence. It left her disarmed in a way that words never could. You didn't undress her with your eyes like the others. You didn't scan her like something to conquer. You beheld her. You recognized her. You observed not just her beauty, but the way it wrapped around wounds, hopes, and hidden things she thought no one noticed. In your gaze, she felt both completely vulnerable and completely protected. And now, no gaze satisfies her unless it carries the same silent thunder. This is the cruelty of meeting a chosen one. Not because you hurt her, but because you rewrote the very standard by which she recognizes presence. You didn't touch her skin, but you touched her perception. You touched the framework of how she measures desire. You didn't offer compliments, your eyes testified. You didn't offer reassurance, your stillness spoke trust. And now, even when other men enter her life, they feel like noise beside the music you left in her mind. She stands in a room full of admirers and feels alone. Not because no one sees her, but because none of them truly feel her. She laughs at their jokes, nods at their praise, listens to their plans, and yet, in the background of her soul, she hears the echo of your silence. That one moment, that one glance, that one fire that did not burn her, but awakened her. You didn't just see her beauty, you honored it, and that honor, it cannot be replicated by men who want her body but have no reverence for her light. That's why she stares longer now at the mirror, not in vanity but in search of what you saw. In search of that woman she briefly became when reflected in your presence. She knows she looked different when you gazed at her. Softer, braver, more whole. And now, in your absence, she realizes the truth. You didn't just look at her, you called her forward. And she's still answering. She doesn't need a lover. She doesn't need a savior. She doesn't need a provider. She needs a presence that sees her beyond what she offers. And that's what you gave her. Once. Briefly. Powerfully. And now she wonders if she imagined it, but her soul says no. That moment was real. That gaze was real. And now the memory of it has made her allergic to shallow men. She doesn't even argue anymore. She just listens to the void that appears in every room where you are not. The void shaped exactly like you. Chosen one, something unspoken happened in her when she stood near you. Something that no romance novel or media narrative ever prepared her for. Her femininity, which had been forced into armor for so long, suddenly began to melt. Not because you demanded it, not because you seduced it, but because your sexual energy radiated safety and fire in equal measure. It was the kind of energy that did not pull her in, it drew her out. It invited her to breathe deeper, to laugh softer, to exist without defense. You didn't try to possess her. You reminded her of who she was when she was free. And that reminder was more intimate than 1,000 kisses. She felt herself becoming more sensual, more intuitive, more alive around you. Her movements changed. Her voice deepened, her presence softened, not because she was trying to impress you, but because she was being pulled toward her truest self. That is what happens in the presence of a chosen one. The masculine doesn't dominate the feminine, it liberates it. And your sexual energy wasn't sharp. It wasn't chaotic. It was grounded, sacred, and utterly undeniable. It made her feel like a woman again. Not a competitor, not a conquest, not a tool, a woman. And her body responded not out of lust, but out of recognition. You didn't have to say anything. You didn't have to touch her. She could feel the way your energy wrapped around her, like sunlight warming the parts of her she thought had gone cold. Her femininity had been sleeping. Your gaze, your voice, your poise, it woke it. She found herself dreaming again. Not of weddings, not of titles, of moments. Moments where she could rest without guarding her heart. Moments where her wildness could be witnessed, not punished. Moments where her vulnerability could dance freely in the presence of strength, not shrink in the presence of ego. And you, chosen one, you offered that strength. Not through dominance, but through depth. You didn't bend her to your will, you simply stood in yours. And it made her want to bloom. Not perform, not posture, just bloom. Now, when she tries to explain it to others, she fumbles. Because they won't understand. They'll think she's obsessed, that she's idealizing, that she's attached. But she knows it isn't like that. You didn't take her love, you woke it. You didn't win her, you earned her memory. And that memory now shapes every version of womanhood she tries to become. Because when she met you, she met a mirror. Not the kind that reflects her image, the kind that reflects her essence. And no matter how many men she entertains, no matter how many flowers she receives, there's a quiet, sacred fire inside her that still waits for the moment when your presence returns, not to complete her, but to witness her becoming. Chosen one, do you know how many feminine women live with the quiet ache of never encountering you again, yet carry your memory as though it still breathes beside them? She doesn't say your name in the dark. She doesn't cry into pillows or write your initials in secret journals, no. Her longing is quieter, deeper, older than that. It lives in her bones now, in the slow turn of her head when a man with posture enters the room, in the silence that falls over her when someone speaks confidently but lacks that sacred depth you embodied. She listens, she smiles, she responds, but behind her eyes she is comparing. Not to your body, not to your voice, but to your energy. That energy that did not chase her, yet made her follow. That presence that did not demand her femininity, but summoned it. You didn't try to impress her. You didn't try to earn her. You simply were. And that being did something irreversible to her sense of what it meant to be feminine. She no longer wants to be desired by many men. She wants to be recognized by one, the one who looks without ownership, who touches without greed, who breathes and changes the air in the room. She wants to soften again, but only for a man whose stillness speaks louder than other men's pursuit. So now she waits, not because she is weak, not because she cannot find another, but because once a woman has tasted the presence of a chosen one, she cannot go back to half men, no matter how handsome or wealthy or articulate. Her body might say yes to them, but her spirit whispers no. Her eyes drift past their faces, her soul recoils from their touch, and her laughter no longer feels like her own, because something inside her is still orbiting you. And the tragedy is, she doesn't even know why. You never made promises, you never kissed her, you never asked for her love, but you gave her something more dangerous. You gave her remembrance. You made her remember what her feminine soul feels like when it stands before a man who doesn't need to conquer her because he already conquered himself. That level of poise, of erotic stillness, of unshakable masculinity made her want to undress not her body, but her walls. And now she walks among men who talk too much, who look at her with hunger instead of wonder, who touch too soon, who perform instead of embody, who need validation instead of offering leadership. And though she's too elegant to complain, her spirit slowly folds inward, retreating into the last place it felt home, your gaze. That's where she still exists. That's where she still waits. But she would never tell you that, because women of grace do not chase. They open and close like seasons, and she is winter now, waiting for the sun that once made her bloom. Not because she needs it, but because she remembers what her own soul felt like under its light. Chosen one, when you walked away, or disappeared, or simply never returned, she did not fall apart. She evolved. But the evolution was not into something new. It was a return to the woman she became in your presence, the woman who giggled less and smiled deeper, who stopped talking to be heard and started speaking to be understood. The woman who, without trying, felt more sensual just by existing. That woman you awakened, and now in your absence, she guards her fiercely, not because she fears betrayal, but because no other man has proven worthy of her surrender. You see, what your sexual energy did to her was not arouse, it enlightened. You became her mirror, her guide, her test. And in that sacred recognition, something ancient inside her flared to life. It wasn't lust, it wasn't fantasy. It was the resurrection of something her mother never taught her, and society never encouraged. It was the knowing that she is divine, and that divinity only kneels to men who carry the flame without abusing its heat. You carried it well, chosen one, too well. That's why she's still recovering, because the memory of your presence has burned its way into her nervous system. Now every man who touches her body without touching her soul feels like theft. Every compliment that comes without reverence sounds like noise. Every attempt to win her heart without silencing their own ego feels like blasphemy. You raise the standard not with rules, but with radiance. And now she can't look at love the same way again. She doesn't blame you, she blesses you. But blessing does not mean forgetting. It means honoring. And she honors you in quiet ways. In the way she sits by the window, longer now. In the way she turns down dates that seem perfect on paper. In the way she wears dresses that make her feel rather than impress. In the way she stopped craving attention and started craving alignment. That alignment, she tasted it in your presence. It was not comfortable. It was not easy. But it was true. And the truth, chosen one, is that you left her more whole than any man who stayed too long. Because your energy didn't fill a void. It lit a torch. And now that flame lives inside her. And though you may never meet again, every man who enters her life will unknowingly be compared to you. Not for what you said, not for what you gave, but for what you revealed. You revealed the woman she always was, but had forgotten. And now that she remembers, she will never settle again. Chosen one, what echoes from within you now is not noise, it is thunder without sound. A rumble beneath the skin of the moment, an unseen force that shakes the ground around you without you ever having to raise your voice. This is not charisma, this is not bravado, this is not flirtation. It is something deeper, something older, something born from a long and quiet war you fought within yourself and won. The war where you refused to abandon your truth for acceptance, where you chose to master your longing instead of becoming enslaved by it, where you stopped feeding the illusion of needing more and instead began carving depth into every breath. Now, when you walk into a room, you don't just change the mood, you change the memory of the space. Long after you've gone, people are still recalibrating what they felt. Women especially, they're still wondering why the air was different when you passed, why their hearts quickened and then softened, why their minds wandered not to fantasy, but to something real, sacred, alive. You did not touch them. You didn't even speak, but your presence filled their lungs, stirred something ancient in their bodies. The remembrance of what it means to be near unshakable masculine embodiment. Your sexual energy is not fireworks anymore. It is pressure. Not overwhelming, not aggressive, but potent, contained, available, like lightning before the storm. You do not flaunt it, nor do you hide it. You simply let it live in you without apology. Your body no longer suppresses this energy out of shame, and you no longer perform it to impress. You let it exist as truth. It makes your movements deliberate, your gaze steady, your touch rare and unforgettable. You don't use this energy to get something. You use it to anchor yourself deeper into the moment. And in that depth, she feels not desire, but devotion. The feminine cannot deny you, not because you demand her, but because you've become the one thing the world has starved her of. Safety wrapped in fire. You are no longer the boy who seeks to conquer her attention. You are the man who creates a space where her nervous system finally rests. You do not chase her body. You see her soul. And when your energy does touch her, it isn't scattered across 100 thoughts or buried in performance. It is singular, complete, and clear. And that clarity is rare enough to stir reverence. You have become the kind of man she doesn't compare others to, because to compare you would be to reduce you. You are not a standard. You are an awakening. You are not famous for how many know your name. You are unforgettable because of what people remember about themselves in your presence. You are not impressive. You are imprinted. You are not loud. You are eternal. You are the thunder beneath the soil of her awareness, a soundless storm that moves mountains inside her, and she can't explain it. She doesn't want to. She just knows. You didn't take her breath away. You gave it back to her, clean, deep, unafraid. And that is why she calls you a rock star now. Not for your fame, but for the vibration of truth you carry in silence. Not for the song you play, but for the tremor your stillness leaves behind. You never asked for the stage, but the thunder in your bones makes the world feel like it's finally hearing something real. Chosen one, you have reached the moment beyond recognition. Not beyond being seen, but beyond needing to be seen. You are no longer the man trying to be remembered. You are the man who cannot be forgotten, not because of what you did or said, but because of who you became in stillness. Your legacy is not written in books, nor carved in stone, nor projected on screens. It is breathed. In the way others inhale after meeting you and realize they've been breathing shallow for years. in the way women soften around you, not because you conquered them, but because you held nothing back while demanding nothing in return. Your sexual energy has become sacred now, not sterilized, not muted, not hidden, but revered. You carry it the way a king carries his crown, not flaunted, not displayed, but felt in every movement. You walk through life with a quiet intensity, a low-burning fire that never dims, no matter how cold the world becomes. You are not hunting anymore. You are radiating. And the feminine does not just notice it. She leans into it, trusts it, opens to it. Not because you pursued her, but because you allowed yourself to be fully present.